TVGrace presents the inexpressible words of God, the gospel of grace, on the lips of Jesus Christ man. Abba, Father.
2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 7. For the mystery of iniquity is already at work. The mystery of iniquity. Say, the mystery of iniquity. This is a mystery that until now no one has been able to preach. This is to say, when pastors read this, they have no clue how to explain it because it's a mystery. A mystery is something that the common sense cannot dictate. So then, those that have tried to explain it, they have to give life to the devil. Those that try to explain it say, no, it's that Satan still reigns the lake of fire when Satan was destroyed 2,000 years ago. So then, if Satan was destroyed, then the mystery remains unsolved. And today we are going to explain it. Today we have a theological class in Growing in Grace Ministry. Think that you are in a college learning history and that you came here to learn information that's going to empower you and deliver you from wicked men, from religion, to walk in the way of truth. It says, verse 7, for the mystery of iniquity is already at work. It's already begun. The mystery of iniquity. There is only the one at present restraining it until he might be gone out of the midst. Paul says, listen, it's already in action, but since I am alive, I detain it. It is to say, my presence here in this moment detains it because with me in the forefront, I try to explain it. But when I am removed, then that's going to then begin with all its power. Remember when Paul says, after my departure, savage wolves will come among you, not forgiving the flock? After what? My departure, savage wolves will not spare the flock. This is to say that what detained the manifestation or the action of the mystery of iniquity was Paul's presence. But if you remove Paul from the midst, then the action will continue and it will continue to be manifest. So then we have to look at what is the mystery of iniquity, because there are two mysteries. There's the mystery of deity and the mystery of iniquity. For an example, the mystery of iniquity begun in the Eden by one man. There begun the one that damaged our flesh. But that stopped for thousands of years until Paul arrived, and then Paul says, that mystery that begun there, it's now in action, but I am stopping him. By one man, look, notice, one man, the mystery of iniquity came. By another man, Jesus Christ, came the mystery of deity. There are two mysteries, deity and iniquity. Deity means God, holiness, goodness, what's good. So iniquity means evil, incorrect, false. Now, the mystery, thank you, the mystery of deity, let's look for it in the first letter to Timothy. Timothy, that's found after that letter, right there, past one page. We were in Thessalonians. And look at chapter 3 of the first letter to Timothy, verse 16. Let's see the mystery of deity or godliness. It says, without question, great is the mystery. You see the word mystery there? Great is the mystery of godliness. Deity. And what is the mystery of deity? That God was what? That God was manifest in what? in the flesh. And when was God manifest in flesh? In the person of Jesus Christ. And then who was Jesus Christ? God. Jesus Christ was the Son. It was God himself. What happens is that everything that a woman birthed, you have to call a child. Couldn't say Mary had a beautiful father. But that's a mystery that the Son is the Father, that the babe is God, right? But now, Paul, the master builder of our foundation, when he speaks about this, he doesn't say that Mary had a child or God had a child. Paul's problem with the Jews wasn't that God had a son. Look, Paul could have said God had a son, and the Jews might have said, and Paul, you think he might have another child or 2 or 3 children? No, the problem was that God said is that son was God. It wasn't that God had a son. It was that God manifests himself in flesh. And when he was manifest in flesh, he was known as the Son of God. That was the mystery that when you read history, the disciples, they were confused. Philip said, oh man, we are confused because it's that you speak of God and then you yourself forgive sin, and only God can forgive sin. So then you say that God will send the Spirit, and then you blow into someone the next day. Receive. So why don't you show us the Father so we get out of this confusion? So he says, Philip, don't you know that I am in the Father and the Father is in me? But Philip didn't understand that. In other words, my spirit is God. My flesh, it's called Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus of Nazareth is not God. He is the one that dwells within Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus of Nazareth is a vehicle to gather the sins of man, a lamb to forgive all the sins. But he that is within Jesus of Nazareth is God himself. That's why Philip says, show us the Father, and it'll be enough. Just show him to us. Philip was asking for an audience, a little meeting behind the mountain. Listen, Father, here, I present Philip. Hey, how are you? No, I can't. I am. There was confusion among them, but Jesus could not explain that because his purpose was for them to be confused so they can kill him. Because if they had discovered that he was God, you think they're going to kill him? So he did that purposely. Sometimes he would say, and this is where the Jehovah's Witnesses get confused, because sometimes he would say, my Father is greater than I. Certainly the Father is greater than the flesh. But the Jehovah's Witnesses use that to say, you see, you realize that the Father is greater than him? So let's go with Jehovah and leave the Son. But it's that the Son is Jehovah. So then only Paul says, this is without question. God was manifest in flesh. Don't argue with anyone about this. Know that the prophet said, that he said, that she said, that John, that Mark, that Luke. No, go straight to your apostle, he that laid down the foundation. He says, it is without question this mystery. God was manifest in flesh. But I didn't come to speak about this mystery. I came to speak about the mystery of iniquity. So the mystery of iniquity says that God was not manifest in flesh, but that God had a son with the womb of Mary. God stood in heaven, but he begot in Mary a son. Look how infinite it is. Look, the Catholics, the Protestants, the Mormons, the Jehovah's Witnesses all teach, oh, how good to be this Son of God. And with that, they deceive you because that is the principle of iniquity, to say that he isn't God. The mystery is that God was manifest in that body. Evil is where you teach that is not God, that's the Son of God. But the heaven was empty. That's what the song says. You left your throne and your crown for me when you came to Bethlehem to be born. They sing it and then they don't believe it. Listen, many of you are saying it's true, it's true. He has a point. I see your faces. They look like rocking chairs. It looks like you're in a rocker. I receive no one does this here. That all. It's good when everyone does this. Others don't do this nor that. No, but now, Paul discovers the mystery of deity. He discovers that great mystery. And he says it, without question, brethren, God was manifest in flesh. He's the only one of all the men of God, of the old and new covenant. The only one that says that God was manifest in flesh was Paul. No one else had discovered that. Pastor, and how did he know that? Because one day he went to paradise. One day he went to the third heaven. Remember when he said, I don't know if in the body or out of the body, he went to paradise. And when he went to paradise, he was before the Lord and he said, can you show us the Father? And Jesus said, I am. Oof. Abba, Father, beloved God. Beloved God. If the Son is the Father and the Father is the Son, Jesus Christ is the King of kings and the Lord of lords. That's where Paul, that was a scholar of the Old Testament scriptures, understood Isaiah 9:6 that says, because a child is born, his name, Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father. That's where Isaiah 9:6 became revelation in the mind of Paul. So finally he said, without question, great is the mystery of deity. God was manifest in flesh. Now, do you think that Paul, knowing this, wasn't going to try to help those preachers of those days, especially the apostles that walked with the flesh of God, that saw the flesh of God? That is the same problem you have. You have that problem because you live with people that see your flesh, but they don't see your spirit. So then they judge you by the weaknesses of your flesh when you are not that. You are perfect. It's the same problem you have. You have that problem because you know that with one offering, he's perfected you forever. But if your husband or your wife or your uncle or your aunt or your companion or neighbor or a family member that moved in with you don't know this, one day he sees you a little bit on the other side, and he's saying he's perfect with one offering, and it's true, you're perfect, but he saw your imperfections. So if he's confused and know you according to the flesh, he violates a principle against you. Oh, and he can receive punishment. Behaving good and you're behaving badly, he receives the punishment. Hello? Look how paradoxical this is, that you see a brother misbehaving and unjustly you mistreat him. And then the angels that know you in spirit and not in the flesh, why is he mistreating that person? Then an angel makes your life impossible. And then you say, oh, this is unjust. He that misbehaved, and I'm the one that got the whipping? Well, shut your mouth and don't get into these matters and know no one according to the flesh. That is the problem of this mystery. This is a mystery. Say a mystery. Don't you see that the first one that respects that principle is God? He don't know you according to the flesh. So if you don't think as God does, you judge, and then God punishes you for judging something that he's asked you not to know according to the flesh. This is problematic. This is a mystery. A mystery. Where were we? What detour? Hello. Let's then look to where was it born or unfolded the mystery of iniquity. Let's go to Galatians chapter 1. That is why Paul said that your liberty does not become a stumbling act to another. Don't you see that there are people that are weak in faith? So then Paul sometimes was told, "Are you hungry, Paul?" "Man, I am starving, brother. I haven't eaten in 2 days in this trip." There is meat there, but it's been sacrificed to idols. He says, "What idols? That's all nonsense. Give me a piece of that," and he would eat it. But if there was a religious one from circumcision beside him, he would get offended. And Paul says, don't, by eating meat, offend the conscience of one that's weak in faith. That's why you have to select the people whom you walk with. People that are mature, because your freedoms, you have to know how to manifest them. Because your freedom that for you is nonsense, the other one is tearing himself apart and judging you. And then the angels whom they punish, it's the one being torn apart. And you that are the one at fault pass justified smoothly. You are disciplined. The other one is torn apart for judging you. You are dangerous here on earth. As a matter of fact, you should go with God. Galatians chapter 1, verse 18. Then after 3 years, I went to Jerusalem to see Peter. How many years went by? Where was Peter? In Jerusalem. And what did Peter do? He went to Jerusalem and he remained with him 15 days, 2 weeks and a day. But I saw none of the other apostles except whom? James, the second child Mary had, Jacob, because marriage is honorable among all. Mary continued having kids with her husband, Joseph. Well, Jacob, which is James, the one who wrote the book of James, said, "But I didn't see any of the other apostles except James, the Lord's brother." Verse 20 says, "I assure you before God that what I am writing you is no lie." He needed evidence. He said, I went to Jerusalem. I didn't do this hiding privately here with the church. No, I wanted to save Peter and the apostles from the mystery of iniquity, because I knew that they were going to teach the doctrines of Jesus of Nazareth. Because they don't know that Jesus of Nazareth was a veil to bring us into a new and living way. But you can't imitate that veil, because if you imitate that veil, you'll wind up on the cross. Or where do you think our Protestant brothers are? Tucked into a cross every Sunday. Living lives of pain, sacrifices, drowned, fearing God, that God doesn't strike them and send them to hell. So then he was there 15 days, and you know what he warned them about? He told them all of the mystery. You know, one of the things he told them when he left, James called Peter over and said, "Peter, why were you speaking for so long with Paul?" And Peter said, "James, look, you know what's going on? It's that since I walked on the water, remember when I walked on water? Well, I am one of the most prominent. Paul is concerned that I teach Jesus of Nazareth." You know what Paul told me? He told me that God was within Jesus of Nazareth. And when he was risen from the dead, he stopped being your brother. When he was risen, he was God over all things, and Mary was not his mother. It's that he became flesh in the womb of Mary. And James said, well, this puts in danger all of our doctrine. This puts in danger all of our doctrine. Because imagine, we walked with him and we saw him and we touched him. John says that's what we did. And John, come over. Paul is driving Peter crazy with what he's told him. He says that if we know Christ according to the flesh, we don't know him that way any longer. And he's also saying, listen to this, Peter. Or Peter says to them, he's also saying that the devil was destroyed. And I know that he's out there like a roaring lion looking to whom he shall devour. Oh, and another thing, you know what Paul told him? Paul told him, with one offering, he says, he perfected us forever. And John jumped and said, but what then are we going to do what I've said? If someone has sinned, we have an advocate with the Father. Sin was removed because Zechariah 3:9 says that my servant in one day will remove sin from the earth. Well, if there are evidence of this, show it to me. Let's go to the book of Acts, the book of history of the life of the apostles, what the apostles done. And whom wrote it was Luke, and Luke doesn't lie. He that did so with perfection and put it all in the right order. 21:17. Paul is speaking, and when we had come to Jerusalem, the brothers received us with joy. The following day, Paul went in with us to see whom? James, Jacob, the brother of Jesus, and who were gathered there, and all the elders were present. How many? All. When he had greeted them, he told them in detail those things that God had done with the Gentiles through his ministry. And when they heard it, they glorified God and said, you see, brother, how many thousands of Jews therefore are who have believed. They are all zealous for the law. And Paul might have said, I'm not speaking about the law. What I preach is grace. But they didn't want to hear that word. They say, you see, brethren, how many Jews therefore have believed and are zealous for the law? By the law, no one is justified by the law. But let's continue reading. It says, where were we? Verse 21, but they have been informed about you that you teach all the Jews that are among the Gentiles to abandon Moses, as if to say they should not apostatize. From Moses, Paul taught that you had to abandon the law, the Sabbath day, prohibitions of foods and vestments. Paul apostatized of that covenant because that's a covenant with defects, saying that they ought not to circumcise the children nor walk according to their customs. What then? The assembly might certainly meet because they've heard you have come. Therefore, do what we tell you. There are 4 men that have taken a vow. Take them with you, purify yourself with them, pay their expenses so that they may shave their heads. And all will understand that there is nothing according to what they've said about you, but that you walk orderly and you're keeping the law. For the apostles, the order was that you walk according to the law. And Paul teaches us in Galatians that all that rely on the works of the law are under a curse. This is a covenant of grace. But notice the finale of all of this. Let's look to the next chapter, chapter 22, verse 17 and 18. Paul says, and it happened when I returned to Jerusalem and was praying in the temple that I was in a trance. And I saw him saying to me, hurry and get out of Jerusalem quickly, for they will not receive your testimony concerning me. So I said, Lord, they know that in every synagogue I imprisoned and beat those who believed on you. And when the blood of your witness of Stephen was poured, I was standing there consenting and watching over the garments of those killing him. Verse 22, and they listened to him until this word. And then they raised their voice and said, hang such a man above the earth, for it is not good that he lives. And how they cried out and tore their clothing. When Paul spoke, those that kept the law and those that converted in the day of Pentecost, all of the Christians of those days, about 40 of them raised up and said, this man should not live. And if he should not live, what should he do? It's die. So let's see who plotted that. Let's go to chapter 23, verse 12. Verse 12. The plot against Paul. And when it was day, some of the Jews band together and bond themselves under oath, saying that they would neither eat nor drink till they had killed what? Paul. And they were doing this fasting and praying. Now, they were what? In verse 13. Now, there were more than 40, those who have formed this conspiracy. Now, hear this. Having came to the chief priests and whom? The elders, who received them with joy. Remember the elders in chapter 21, verse 17, that they were received with joy. The elders received them with joy. You know who were here? The apostles and the chief priests. All of that Sanhedrin, that authority of Jerusalem, those 40 went to the church, to the leader of the church. And look at what they said. Let's repeat verse 14. Who having came to the chief priests and the elders said, we have bound ourselves with an oath to eat nothing until we should kill Paul. Do you give us permission? It looks like the elders says, definitely. Wipe him out. Now, you therefore, together with the consul, Listen to what the elders said to the 40. So now, therefore, with the consul, suggest to the commander that he be brought before us, as if we wanted to inquire concerning him a little more information, and we will be ready to kill him before he comes near. That was the excuse to say that they wanted to inquire a little more of his life. Do you want me to continue with this novel, or should I stop here? Remember that I was there. I saw that. I'm sharing it with you because I was there. That's why you hadn't seen it before. It was I that saw it, right? And why didn't you see it? Because it was for I to see it, or else you would have said it before I. Listen. Verse 16. So when Paul's sister's son, that blessed sister's son, heard of their ambush, it looks like the son of the sister of Paul worked in the consul, maybe picking up paper, and he heard and said, what bandits these apostles? They want to kill my uncle. Remember that Paul said that he witnessed the death of Stephen, and probably the apostles said, this man is an assassin. We have to kill him. He's against the law of Moses. This man, not good that he continues to live. So it says that the sister's son heard of the ambush, and he went and entered the barracks and told Paul. Then Paul called one of the centurions, said to him, take this young man to the commander. Hello, are we here? For he has something to tell him. And so he brought him to the commander and said, Paul, the prisoner, called me to him and asked me to bring this young man to you because he has something to say to you. So then the commander took him by the hand and went aside and asked privately, what do you have to tell me? And he said, the Jews. The young man spoke clearly. The Jews have agreed to ask, it was approved by the elders, to ask that you bring Paul down to the consul tomorrow, as though they were going to inquire more fully about him. But do not believe them. Listen, it looks like the commander said, man, these religious people are such hypocrites. Because notice the commander thinking that it was honestly that they were going to bring Paul to question him and inquire. That's why they had to separate religion from the state, because religion is hypocritical, because the majority of these religions, they're evil. The religious people are worse than politics. because a religious one will kill you thinking he's doing God a favor. Listen. So then he told them, the Jews have agreed to ask that you bring Paul down to the council, as though they were going to inquire more fully about him. But don't believe them, because more than 40 of them lie in wait for him, men who have bound themselves an oath not to eat or drink until they have killed him. And now they are awaiting your promise. So then the commander let the young man depart and commanded him, tell no one that you have revealed these things to me. And I don't want to read more. If you want to read more, you have a Bible home. I couldn't read everything because time doesn't allow. But I want to tell you that I, from this pulpit, listen, the pulpit of the Triple S, announces clearly that they, the apostles, though the apostle Paul tried to warn them for 15 days, but you're seeing, as much as Paul tried, look the book of Galatians, and we'll finish with this. Galatians chapter 2, after those 15 days had gone by, where he warned them and he told them everything he had to tell them, Paul waited 14 years, and in chapter 2, verse 1, look at what it says. Paul didn't decide there quickly to say that the apostles were wrong. Look at what it says. Then after 14 years, I went up again, where? To Jerusalem with Barnabas, and I took with me Titus. And I went up by revelation, and not to run privately, I exposed the gospel that I shared with the Gentiles. But it says here, then when Peter came to Antioch, after he warned them for 14 days, 15 years had gone by, he says, but when Peter came to Antioch, I withstood him face to face, because he was to be what? Condemned. In other words, Peter kept persisting that God had a son. Peter kept persisting in that they had to form a religion of Jesus of Nazareth. That's why Peter was the first pope. Because where Paul was killed was in Rome, and those that killed him were the apostles. They collaborated, though not directly, though Peter was an expert with the sword in his hand, knocking ears down. And in Rome was formed what's known that Romanism that hid the entire teachings of Paul. They made sure that Paul taught no more grace. That's where rosaries came out, and that's where everything happened with Catholicism. And Catholicism, with their tentacles, they covered all of Central and South America. Why do you think the reform begun with us, the Hispanics? Because we were the most harmed. That's why those inquisitions that they would do in Spain, that they would kill everyone that opposed them in history. I read in history that once in Spain, a group had risen up that were Paulines. They were known as the Paulines. Those that they were all killed. And those that teach the truth, they're not liked. The religions are a den of thieves. All religions are a product of the mystery of iniquity. Listen, but do you think that they have pants or skirts well placed to dare to prove that I don't have the truth? They can't, because I have it written. Their defense is, I think that's not so. They didn't teach me that way, but it's written here that way. So then from Rome, from those tentacles that came out of Rome, the Catholics, from them came out the Protestants. That's the same dog with a different collar, and the Baptists and the Methodists and the Jehovah's Witnesses. All of that factory of evil that have damaged this world, that have salted, they haven't added flavor. They've salted the world. 2,000 years of deception. And today, God felt like taking out of the mind those templates. That's been in your Bible for many years, but you come here and you say, man, I've read this in my Bible, but never realized it, because God had you veiled, because that information could not come sooner. God has risen great men as Calvin, great men as Luther, not Rutherford. He's from the Jehovah's Witness, but great reformers, good leaders that love the Lord have been risen. But God didn't remove the veil. He allows them to be veiled because it didn't suit us that this would take place before, but now when at the close of the millennium. And God, that's what he planned. It's here. Clearly, no one has seen it. So religion incorporate the teachings of the apostles with those of Paul, and they mix it together and swallow that broth. And that's what produces what we've seen. Falsehood. People that don't love the truth. You speak to them of predestination, they don't believe it. You tell them the devil was destroyed, they say, that can't be. You tell them they're angels, they say, that's nonsense. You're gods. Oh, gods. If you tell them they're horses, oh, yes, we are horses. We're dumb. But call them gods so you can see. But you know what? The understanders will understand. There are people that are amateurs of truth. There are others that know that they're like Nicodemus, that they wait for the night to go to Jesus. Let's wait for nighttime so they don't see me. Let's stand. Let's stand. We have finished. Tell he that's beside you, I have been educated in the truth. This is the truth.